From fleeting to complex, many people seem to experience strange time slip and alternate reality phenomena. Perhaps we all do, and usually do not even notice them at the time. Here, 4 Weird World viewers give accounts of those mysterious experiences which defy explanation. Justine. In the summer of 1985, Justine and her mother decided to visit the Crescent Hotel in the historic district of Eureka Springs, which is located in the Ozark Mountains of Arkansas in the US. Ironically, the hotel has always been known for ghosts in what was built as a resort town in the late 1800s. The town has an area of Victorian-era grand hotels, theatres and a bathhouse, all built around the city's natural springs where the ghosts are said to gravitate. The Crescent Hotel, known to be one of America's most haunted places, is on the upper left turn-off of the main road, but Justine and her mum mistakenly took the other turn-off to the right. There are shops down in that direction as well, so they hadn't realised that they were heading down the wrong road. Although they missed out on visiting the Crescent, they still had quite the day out. Outside one of the shops they passed was a man in a white shirt, suspenders and brown trousers who was building the wooden frame for window panes by hand. He waved at Justine and her mum and went on with his work. They didn't think anything of his appearance because Eureka was at that time an artistic town and attracted many unusual characters who might dress in period clothes. They noticed a shop next door to the man's and went inside. It was summer and they were feeling hot and needing a bathroom. The ambience of the shop and the shop lady herself were friendly enough, although something seemed odd. Justine went to the bathroom while her mum chatted with the lady and ordered a lemonade. It needs to be kept in mind that Eureka is a bit of a tourist trap where things are usually sold at inflated prices, but the lemonade was only 25 cents. The 3 women talked for a while until Justine's mum had finished her lemonade. The shop lady then said to them, "I want you to see my Christmas display from last year." She pulled out a very old-looking photograph of her shop with a cute doll display in the window. In the photograph, cars from the 1930s were parked in front of the shop. Justine explains that this was not a mock-up retro photo, but an actual print from the 1930s. She could tell by the type of paper it was printed on. She comments that it was hard to get away from the lady as perhaps she hadn't had visitors for a long time, a very long time. Justine and her mum finally did leave and continued walking down the wrong road for quite a while. However, they finally turned to go home as it became too late and they were too tired to walk up the hill to the Crescent Hotel by that point. Chillingly, as they passed by the shop again, it was closed and looked like it had been closed for years. They were so freaked out by this event, they took showers when they got home and vowed that they would not be going down that road again, not in this lifetime anyway. Glenn believes that he experienced a possible time slip when he was just turned 8 years old. The year was 1981, when he was in Year 2 at Dubbo North Primary School in New South Wales, Australia. The school year had started out normally, but about halfway through he had developed symptoms for which his mother took him to the doctor, who discovered that he had nephritis, an infection of the kidneys which required hospitalisation. He was immediately admitted to the children's ward at the Dubbo Base Hospital. The ward was the oldest and the original part of the hospital, built in the late 1800s. Glenn remembers a lot about his 6-week stay there, and his memories are vivid as it was quite traumatising as a child because of the painful blood tests and needles he had to have daily. But the aspect that always stood out to him were the nurses. They were very caring and kind to him, often attending to him late at night and early in the mornings, and during the day often patrolling around the ward, which was a large open hall type building. He remembers their uniforms and the nurses' hats that they wore, and he was always curious about the stars on the hats and what they meant. He noticed that some hats had more stars than others, while some were full stars and others were half stars. After about 4 weeks, Glenn was moved out into a new annex area attached to the ward, and he never saw the nurses with the stars in this area. Instead, they wore a uniform that was more modern for the time and without the hat. Finally, after weeks of treatment, he was discharged and was fully recovered a few months later. This is where things get interesting. Glenn often told people about his stay in the children's ward and the nurses with the stars on their hats as he grew up. Later, he would tell his wife and 2 oldest children about the experience. Now, fast forward to 2003. Glenn had left Dubbo about a decade before and was back visiting relatives with his wife and 3 children when his youngest daughter, aged 1, suffered a severe infection and had to be treated at Dubbo Base Hospital. After many hours there consulting doctors, she was seen by an older nurse to whom Glenn remarked that he had been a patient there in 1981. He told her that he remembered the nurses and their uniforms, that they were wearing hats with stars on them. The nurse looked at him perplexed and said that she had worked there for 32 years, starting in 1970, and never seen nurses wearing this uniform. Glenn asked if maybe her recollection was wrong, or whether perhaps she may have mixed up the years she started, and she became somewhat agitated, with a firm no, so he left it at that. Many years later, in around 2021, he was looking at the Dubbo Memories page when photographs of nurses were posted from 1967, where they were wearing the uniform with stars on the hat that he remembers. Intrigued, on further investigation, he couldn't find this uniform past the late 1960s or the ranking system using the stars, showing experience and who was in charge before 1958. He still feels bewildered as to whether he was cared for by ghost nurses or had experienced a time slip during those 4 weeks in the children's ward. Having been a child, everything in the ward looked old, but that still did not explain the long superseded uniforms and hats with stars. Marie Firth's family loved to take walks in the summer, and one Sunday she and her mum decided to do just that. Living in Southampton in England, their walk, as they talked, took them to Queen's Terrace, which is opposite a small park area and Dockgate 4. Marie points out, for reasons that will be explained, that Southampton is a very busy port, both for containers and cruise ships, so the main road opposite Queen's Terrace was always full of noisy lorries and cars 7 days a week. It was never deserted or quiet. As she and her mother turned right into Queen's Terrace, an elegant row of houses, of which some are now offices, came into view. They had elegant curved 18th century bay windows on the second floor, and on passing the first one, they heard beautiful harpsichord playing. They both stopped, looked up to the bay window, which was half open, and could see a man's head and body bobbing about as he was playing. At that time, Marie failed to notice there were no traffic sounds whatsoever, just deathly silence and the sound of his playing. They listened to him for a few minutes and discussed how good he was, then decided to continue their walk, still oblivious to the lack of traffic, which they later recalled. They got to the end of Queen's Terrace, then decided to walk back and again listen to the man play before making their way home. It only took a couple of minutes to walk back, and they were shocked. Not only was the man not there, the window was boarded up with planks of wood and a for rent sign outside. Marie states that even if someone had worked like a demon to board up the window, it would have been impossible for them not to have heard the hammering and banging. They walked home discussing the strange events and realised later that they were a time slip back to the 18th century when the house was probably the man's home. If Marie had been on her own, she could have questioned her perceptions, but her mother witnessed all this with her. Aiden. Aiden still wonders if he lost 6 minutes from his life. He is 22 years of age and a full-time university student studying history and philosophy and residing in Runcorn in the northwest of Merseyside, England. What happened to him one night still perplexes him, as he had never experienced anything like it, nor do his rational faculties provide him with any sufficient explanation. The strange occurrence still haunts and astounds him as an indescribable phenomenon that he'd only heard in tales, anecdotes and stories from others. It was the 17th of December 2022 and a cold and wintry evening when he had the night to himself. Aiden decided to read a book and was also installing GTA 5 on his Xbox 360 as he wanted to get achievements. As he was reading the book and waiting for his game to install, he checked the time on the Xbox dashboard. It said 11:54 p.m, so he thought to himself, okay, and then left it for approximately another 30 seconds interval when he then checked the dashboard again. It showed 4 zeros, 0 a.m, midnight. Aiden said to himself, how is this possible, and felt stunned and awed by this bizarre brush with the inexplicable. He knew for a fact that he had fast-forwarded into the future by 6 minutes, although it was only seconds. He immediately told his mum and brother, who did not seem convinced, but Aiden knew what had happened to him, and it still sends shivers down his spine even thinking about it. He states that his family home has a history of paranormal activity, and this experience is no exception, but just adds to the chronology of events. It was eerie to think that that was 6 minutes of his life he will never get back.